Stalingrad is not overpowered in clan battles. I have maintained that position since the release of Stalingrad, and I will continue to do so until the heat death of the planet, since that's the only time people are going to stop fighting me on this. To understand why people think that way, that Stalingrad is overpowered in clan battles, I looked through plenty of Reddit threads and found one comment that kind of summed up everything more or less. Quote, having one or more Stalingrads in a lineup is having de facto secondary battleships in the lineup. It's broken. Just because the ships have weaknesses doesn't mean they're balanced. The ships have the same weaknesses every other cruiser has, but with 50% more hit points to soak it up. Anything that counters the Stalingrad will kill any other cruiser and kill it quicker. Having USA P-Pen matched with penetration that could Citadel Yamato from 20 kilometers away is just broken. That is the end of what he was saying. Well, basically what he's saying is Stalingrad's large caliber weapons allow it to set up unbeatable crossfires, and it allows teams to bring what is basically a second battleship. But it ignores the fact that most clan battle strategies from the very beginning of Season 1 have focused around setting up crossfires. And a really easy way to nullify Stalingrad's ability to set up a crossfire is don't get caught in it. Like, really. All jokes aside, what Stalingrad does very well, and this is the reason there's so much salt surrounding it, is that it very effectively punishes mistakes. But if you play well against it, if you angle effectively, and you don't allow the Stalingrad to get off its really good AP salvos, you basically neuter it due to its just garbage HE DPM. Once teams start filtering upward into Hurricane and the standings start evening out, I'm expecting we're going to see way more Moskvas due to the increased skill of Hurricane level enemies to basically angle against Stalingrad and make Moskva's superior HE and Superior's HE DPM, better basically. Not to mention, if you push into a crossfire, you should lose 100% of the time. That's really obvious. If you're that's not the fault of the ships the other team brings. Any ship can set up a crossfire. The issue is in clan battles, most times it's an HE crossfire with a cruiser, but Stalingrad just is a cruiser with good AP. If you aren't, if Stalingrad isn't OP, you might be saying, then how do you counter it? Well, there's a lot of ways. Number one is the Hindenburg. If you're saying, well, if you have to bring a ship to counter another ship, that proves it's OP, and no. It really doesn't. That's a healthy meta right there. Hindenburg's 1/4 pen HE means it eats Stalingrad for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and maybe a snack in the middle somewhere. When it's angled correctly, a Hindenburg should win a 1v1 against a Stalingrad almost every time. Although 1-on-1 fights are pretty rare in clan battles, Hindenburg versus Stalingrad is pretty much always going the way of the Hindenburg. If you see a red Stalingrad on your flank, find an island, pop a spotter plane, just ruin his day. Stalingrad positioning in clan battles is pretty much always very stationary, especially along an island, so you should have no issues landing shots. At best, you're not angled as well as you think you are. He'll get some lucky citadels, but the odds that he kills you are very low, especially considering how long it's going to take to disengage or before his team pushes you out of position. At worst, and most realistically, the Stalingrad is going to burn to a crisp and turn into a nice scuba diving location. That same Reddit comment that I went to earlier noted this about the Hindenburg, that it has, quote, absolutely pathetic HE alpha, lowest per shell of any heavy cruiser for what comes out to some fairly anemic DPM on top of its comparably low fire chances. On top of the lackluster HE, it's slow, its torpedoes are situational, you can see it from the moon, and it has too many liabilities, and it loses in a 1v1 firefight to the Stalingrad. What you're saying is, you need the Stalin to join an unfavorable fight without support, allow itself to get whittled down by multiple enemies, all while the advantage his team should have had somewhere else shits the bed. The same tactic would kill any other cruiser, only quicker. Now, our friend on Reddit seems to be ignoring that Hindenburg's low HE alpha also comes with a 12-gun alpha strike and the ability to pen Stalingrad's 50mm plating that is basically covering a large part of the ship. Not to mention, even with a low fire chance with that many shells, you're going to start a lot of fires in the process. Additionally, Hindenburg has the range to be safe from most. It does have the weird turtle back that sometimes gets fucked from weird angles, but it can be safe from most return fire without many issues. Not to mention, there's also the psychological impact on a Stalingrad player. Having played plenty of Stalingrads in clan battles, if I see a Hindi on my flank and he's been raining on me for a few minutes, I'm gonna maybe start to panic. And if you can get that Stalingrad to panic and move out of position, you probably just won that fight and possibly the flank. Now, there are, well, Hindenburg isn't the only option if you want to have that 50mm pen. There's also Henry IV with IFHE. And let me tell you, these little shits make me want to throw my keyboard at a fucking wall when I'm playing Moscow or Stalingrad. Because there's nothing that pisses me off more than a throttle jockeying Henry IV burning me down from 20 kilometers away. And then you finally get his broadside, and the black hole armor, you know, makes sure that you get 5 overpens. Seriously, if you park one of these at max range, on a flank with a Stalin, like, you're gonna watch the other guy basically rip his hair out in frustration. And not to mention, it's also fast enough to get away, and it's got the front-facing gun blast, so you can push or rotate to another flank if need be. And that 50mm penetration and the huge fire chance over time is gonna fuck Stalingrad up. The next way to counter Stalingrad is with crossfires. See, Stalingrad sets up crossfires, but it's also incredibly vulnerable to them. Now, in the background here, I'm going to show a clip of what happens when you successfully crossfire Stalingrad, and it's going to end in the Stalingrad dying very quickly. Because its gigantic profile, awful concealment, and giant citadel mean basically, if Stalingrad is victim to a good crossfire, it's going to be a really short period of time before it's very, very dead. This Stalingrad in the clip dies in around 2 minutes. If you can find a ship that can arc shells over the island that a Stalingrad is bound to be humping, or have another ship bothering it from the other side, you can whittle down the health pool really, really quick, considering Stalingrad also has the 45-second fire duration time unlike most other cruisers. The next way to counter it is just to get its broadside. I mean, that's really, it has a lot of 50mm armor, but its citadel is not really protected much more than any other tier 10 cruiser. It has a heavier build than most other cruisers, but only by about 30mm. It only has 180, and its citadel is just gigantic. It has the same layout as the Moskva, so basically the waterline to about a third of the way up the hull is a 150mm plate, and then another 40mm plate inside the ship that leads to the citadel. But directly above that, taking up a solid chunk of the Stalingrad's citadel is just straight citadel. Just 7 inches of belt, and, it's free real estate. It extends from the front turret to the back turret, goes 2/3 of the way up the deck, and if you can flank it at a range in a heavy cruiser where you can penetrate that armor, it'll die in 2 or 3 salvos. Zhao can do this incredibly effectively. So can Henri, though, with the reload booster. So once again, Henri just will counter Stalingrad pretty hard. The next way to counter a Stalingrad is with torpedoes. Stalingrad is a big ship. Stalingrad cannot mount hydro. Stalingrad turns like an aircraft carrier. Do I need to say anything else? Stalingrad also cannot control its own spotting, even with radar, and this is just another way to counter it. Basically, when an opposing destroyer is on the flank, there's like a 2 to 3 kilometer buff, depending on the spec of the Stalingrad, in which you can spot the Stalingrad and not get radar back. It means you can trap the Stalingrad in a position unable to turn out without giving broadside for an extended period of time, in which you can set up a crossfire. You can set up your spammy cruisers to take advantage of this and make Stalingrad basically a punching bag. And, you might be saying, well, sure, Stalingrad has all these other weaknesses, but so do all the other cruisers. And yeah, that's true. But the thing is, and here's what Stalingrad does differently, it takes all the standard cruiser weaknesses and turns them up to 11, and it trades it off for its really nice gun characteristics. In reality, these weaknesses will really only show up in the highest levels of competition. But that's the whole idea. Stalingrad requires great play to effectively utilize its guns and mitigate its weaknesses. You could go bowing against an island for 20 minutes on a Stalingrad and average 65,000 damage and never get shot at, but that's not the best way to play it. If you're not a good enough player, Stalingrad is not going to be the ship for you. Its massive weaknesses do make it a very difficult ship to play. There's one more thing. As of right now, the only way to get Stalingrad is through ranked or clan battles, and to be honest, if somebody is good enough to earn a Stalingrad, and you're not, they're probably good enough to beat you in it, with or without it. That's the reason Stalingrad's stats are so inflated. Players who have it are generally really good. Me, of course, being an exception. We all know I suck. If you look at the top percentages of players in all Tier 10 cruisers, the gap between Stalingrad and the other cruisers is not as large as it is with the average. Another hot take I've seen on Reddit is that having to run ships to counter Stalingrad is just more proof of how overpowered it is. Single ship changing the meta, and this is just... Ugh, this is really a bad take. Running different lineups to counter different enemy ships is what we call the meta. It's a great example of a healthy divergent meta. If you remember Season 1, it used to be all Hindenburg spam. Then it moved to Zhao's, and, you know, threw in some Radar Minotaurs, Wrecking Destroyers. Then it ran into the Iron Curtain strategy, running tons of Moskvas, and now it's Stalingrad and Stalingrad counters. Single ships have ruled the meta since way before Stalingrad was introduced. And once again, the introduction of Stalingrad has completely shaken up the meta at high tiers. It's way different from any meta in the previous season. Not to mention, there is no one best comp now with Stalingrad in the mix. The meta for most of the high tier clans used to be almost the exact same lineups. It would be like 3 Zhaos, a battleship, couple radar ships, maybe a radar Yu Yang, or they might just forego the destroyer altogether. But now, with Stalingrad's introduction, there are way more different. There are way more comps. Not to mention, Henry has finally gotten a chance to basically be useful, and there is now no longer just one good comp that you can guaranteed run with high success. Minotaur has fallen out of the meta, which is unfortunate because Minotaur is a fun ship. But that's because Stalingrad got brought in, and the Honorees got brought in to counter it, and Honorees counter Minotaur pretty well. Different ships countering each other in a rock, paper, scissors meta is a sign of a healthy changing meta, and it's something that this game does need if it's to stick around as long as World of Tanks. Now, the issues World of Tanks having is a whole nother topic, but I hope that this video has kind of helped show you why Stalingrad might not be the OP world-ending ship that it's been blown up as, and hopefully it'll let you get some more perspective on how to counter it if you do face a Stalingrad in current meta. Thanks for watching.